You're not a healer or a destroyer, you're the force that chooses which one to become. If you're watching this, there's a reason. Something ancient inside you is waking up. Not just a calling, but a remembering. A remembrance of a truth you probably couldn't fully explain as a child. That you were never just one thing. That you've never belonged entirely to the light or the dark. That you carry both. And not in conflict, but in counsel. There's a sacred, terrifying, beautiful truth few dare to say out loud. Some of us were born with dual power. Not to be good or bad, but to embody the full spectrum of consciousness itself. You are one of them. There are 7 signs that begin to appear not all at once, but over time. They're not obvious. They're not pretty. They're not things you can brag about in spiritual circles. In fact, most of them make you feel like something is wrong with you. But that's the trick. The signs are hidden in the places you were taught to reject. Because the first law of holding dual power is that you'll be conditioned to forget it. The first sign is that you've always felt internally split. Not in a way that makes you unstable, but in a way that reveals that no single label has ever been able to hold you. You can be the most nurturing presence in a room, and also the most terrifying. You can bring peace with your silence or shatter illusions with a single sentence. There's always been a part of you watching yourself from outside the story, knowing you're playing both light and dark roles at once. And that's not confusion. That's capacity. There's a reason people don't know how to categorize you. One moment they see you as a healer. The next, you're the mirror they avoid. You can hold someone in love and burn away their illusions in the same breath. That duality is not weakness. It's a weapon. But only when wielded consciously. Because here's the key. If you don't learn to master it, your dual power will control you. It will swing you between extremes. It will make you question yourself. It will make you fear your own shadow or run from your own light. The second sign is that your presence polarizes. People either want to be close to you or get far away. There is rarely a middle ground, and for a long time you might have thought this meant something was wrong with you. But it's actually confirmation. Your field doesn't allow others to stay neutral, because your frequency triggers whatever they're hiding. Not because you're trying, but because your very existence is a frequency disruptor. You don't just walk into a room, you recalibrate it. And if you're not aware of this, it can feel like rejection. It can make you shrink yourself. But the truth is, you were never meant to be palatable. You were meant to be precise, like a blade, cutting through distortion. You're not here to be liked. You're here to be true. And truth is rarely comfortable. The third sign is that you've experienced extreme internal contradictions. You can access divine compassion and still feel the urge to destroy what no longer serves. You can hold space for healing and still feel waves of raw, primal rage moving through your body. You can cry over beauty and laugh in the face of despair. And this makes you question yourself. You wonder, how can both of these exist within me? Am I broken? Am I unstable? No, you're just awake. Dual power means you've learned to sit with paradox. You don't need things to make logical sense. You don't need to categorize yourself as good or bad. You've died too many ego deaths to care about labels. You care about truth. And truth includes contradiction. Truth includes shadow. Truth includes the parts most people run from. But you run toward them because you know that's where the real magic lies. The fourth sign is that you've been initiated through both pain and ecstasy. Some people awaken through love, others awaken through collapse. You've walked through both. You've touched the divine in moments of bliss and also found sacred clarity in the depths of suffering. You've had visions in the middle of breakdowns. You've heard your soul speak when everything else fell silent. That's because dual-powered souls don't just learn through light. They integrate through the dark. And this makes your wisdom deep. Not just surface-level knowledge, but lived, embodied, cellular truth. You don't teach from theory. You teach from wounds turned into weapons. You don't preach positivity. You transmit presence. And that presence? It's what transforms others without you ever needing to say a word. The fifth sign is that your energy doesn't match your exterior. People see you and assume one thing. Then they feel you and realize they were wrong. You might appear soft until they see the storm behind your eyes. You might look intense until they feel the calm in your presence. That's because your energy is not based on appearance. It's based on frequency. And your frequency is coated with contrast. This is why you've confused people your whole life. Why they've projected onto you. Why they've feared you without knowing why. Because your presence holds what most people are trying to avoid, the integration of opposites. And when someone who's split inside meets someone who isn't, it shakes them. Because you represent what they haven't yet found in themselves, wholeness. The sixth sign is that you've been a mirror your whole life, but only recently realized it. For years, you may have felt like people were constantly misunderstanding you, projecting onto you, blaming you for things you never said or did. But now you see it clearly. You weren't receiving their truth. You were reflecting it. You've always been a mirror one that doesn't distort, doesn't soften, doesn't lie. And because of that, people either love you or fear what you show them. And the final sign, the one that confirms everything, is this. You're starting to feel like you're not supposed to choose between light and dark anymore. That you're not here to pick a side, but to transcend sides entirely. That morality was a tool. That polarity was a school. But now, you're walking into something beyond it all. Something ancient. Something real. You're not becoming anymore. You're unveiling. And that unveiling? It's what sets you free. Because you were never meant to be just a light worker, or a shadow worker, or a healer, or a disruptor. You were meant to be the bridge, the frequency that holds both chaos and clarity, the presence that transmits not just safety but sovereignty, the sacred threshold, how to hold your dual power without destroying yourself. We've all been taught that power is something external, something you earn, something you fight for. But dual power, that's different. It's not something you chase. It's something you carry. It lives in your field, or in your bones, in your gaze. And the deeper truth is this: you've always had it, but the world wasn't ready for it, so it taught you to fear it. That's why you've spent years trying to tame yourself, soften yourself, make yourself smaller. Not because you were weak, but because you were trying to survive your own magnitude. But there comes a moment when that survival instinct becomes a cage, when your soul stops letting you play small, when the fire inside you starts to crack through the walls you built to protect yourself. That's when the identity you created to be accepted begins to collapse. And what rises in its place isn't another mask, it's essence. That essence is what we're here to talk about. Not the light, not the dark, but the force that chooses which one to become. You see, dual power isn't about being both good and bad. It's about being conscious in both directions, and conscious when you heal, conscious when you destroy, and conscious when you rise, conscious when you fall. That's the difference between someone who's reactive and someone who's activated. Dual power doesn't mean you act from impulse. It means you act from presence, from awareness, from a place that isn't trying to prove anything but simply is. So let's be honest for a moment. How many times have you used your power unconsciously? How many times have you spoken truth not to liberate but to wound? How many times have you silenced someone with your intensity, not because they were wrong, but because you were triggered? This is the shadow side of dual power, the part that makes you dangerous to yourself, the part that hijacks your voice when you're not grounded. And if you don't learn to master it, it will sabotage every relationship, every mission, every moment of clarity. Because here's the truth they don't teach in spiritual schools: raw power without integration is destruction. Not always outwardly, but inwardly. You implode, you isolate, you burn bridges, you distrust your own intuition. Not because you're evil, but because you haven't yet learned to ground the frequency you carry. That's the next level, and it's not glamorous. It's not viral. It's not performative. It's internal alchemy. It's the process of meeting every part of yourself, not with judgment, but with authority. Saying, yes, I carry rage. Yes, I carry grief. Yes, I carry light that blinds and darkness that purifies. But I am not ruled by any of them. I am the center. I am the chooser. I am the force. When you reach this level of awareness, something wild happens. You stop fearing your own power. You stop apologizing for your brilliance. And you stop weaponizing your pain. Instead, your energy becomes clean, not sanitized, not nice, but clear, and clarity is what makes you magnetic. Not because you're trying to be, but because there's nothing left for the world to manipulate. You become unshakable. But that clarity comes with a cost. You have to be willing to lose the people who only loved a version of you that played small. You have to be willing to walk away from communities that only accepted the light half of you. You have to be willing to disappoint expectations, destroy illusions, and stand in the discomfort of being fully seen. Because dual power is raw. It's real. It's not for the faint of heart. It demands that you stop hiding. The sacred threshold: how to hold your dual power without destroying yourself. There's a sacred threshold you reach when you stop questioning whether you hold dual power and start asking how to survive it, how to carry it without collapsing, how to walk through the world with a frequency that splits timelines and still stay grounded, how to wield the sword and the chalice without harming yourself in the process. That's where real mastery begins. Not in just knowing who you are, but in learning how to live with it. Because here's the truth, dual power will try to consume you if you don't learn to contain it. Not suppress, not silence, contain. Like sacred fire in an ancient temple. It burns, but it doesn't destroy. It transforms. That's the difference between someone who's overwhelmed by their frequency and someone who becomes a master of it. And that mastery, it doesn't come from books. It comes from initiation. You've already been initiated through heartbreak and through confusion, through deep, echoing loneliness that felt like the universe forgot your name, through moments when you couldn't tell if you were being punished or prepared. But now, you're beginning to see it clearly. Every breakdown was a recalibration. Every rejection was redirection. Every collapse was a clearing. And now there's space inside you where identity used to be. Space for something deeper, something truer. This is the moment you stop asking, what am I meant to do? And start asking, what frequency am I meant to become? Because dual power isn't about action, it's about alignment. It's not about doing more. It's about becoming so energetically precise that your very presence begins to alter the field around you. Not by force, not by words, but by resonance. But here's where it gets tricky. The more powerful your frequency becomes, the more the world will try to distort it. Not because it's evil, but because it's unconscious. And unconscious systems reject clarity. That means you will be misunderstood. You will be projected on. You will walk into rooms where people feel you before they see you, and they won't know what to do with what they feel. That's not your fault. That's your field. So what do? You anchor. You root deeper than the noise. You stop asking people to get you and start asking yourself what you're truly here to transmit. Because clarity isn't something you explain. It's something you embody, and embodiment doesn't need validation. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need to be seen. It just is. And that's the paradox of the sacred threshold. The more powerful you become, the quieter your ego gets. You no longer need to prove that you're gifted or wise or balanced. You are, and that's enough. You no longer need to fight for your truth. You walk in it. You no longer fear being too much. You become the exact amount required to shift a room, a timeline, a system. But you must stay aware. Because your power will always come with a shadow. The more you can heal, the more you can harm. The more you can liberate, the more you can manipulate. And if you're not conscious, your wounds will turn your wisdom into weapons. That's why the most dangerous thing in the world is an unintegrated chosen one. Someone who's powerful but still ruled by old pain. Someone who's awakened but still acting from ego. Someone who's gifted but hasn't yet done the work to hold themselves. So ask yourself, have I truly integrated the shadow parts of my power, or have I just labeled them unhealed and locked them away? Because integration isn't about removing your shadow. It's about giving it a seat at the table, saying, I see you. I know where you came from. I honor the protection you gave me. But I'm leading now. That's when your darkness becomes sacred. That's when your light stops being performative. That's when your power becomes clean. Clean power doesn't mean soft. It doesn't mean passive. It means clear. Clear in intention. Clear in embodiment. Clear in presence. And that clarity, it becomes your compass. You stop chasing signs. You stop looking for permission. You stop outsourcing your guidance. You become a walking oracle, not because you know everything, but because you've become aligned enough to hear what others can't. And this is where it all comes together. You didn't come here to choose a side. You came here to transcend polarity, to walk the razor's edge between light and dark and become the bridge between them. To remind this world that wholeness doesn't mean perfection, it means presence. And to embody the truth that we don't need more saints or more rebels. We need integrated initiators. You are that initiator, not because someone gave you a title, but because your life has carved you into one. You've walked through fire without losing your softness. You've touched the void without losing your vision. You've carried both poison and medicine in your hands and learned how to choose. That's not just evolution, that's embodiment.